Well, thank you for joining today's webinar on deconstruction. I'm Ben Ashmore, Vice President of Government Business Services at CleanEdison. And today with me, I'm joined by Dave Bennink, our deconstruction instructor. And he is going to present you with a webinar on deconstruction training that we offer here at CleanEdison. At the end of the session, we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. You'll notice on your webinar, you have the option to raise your hand or to type your question. If you raise your hand, we'll have the opportunity to open up your line if you have a microphone so that you can ask a question. Otherwise, if you type your question to us, we will read your question and hopefully provide you with the answer you're looking for. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, who will be presenting the webinar. Thanks, Dave. It's all yours.
All right. I appreciate it. So, my name is David Bennink, and I'm with Reuse Consulting. I'm the instructor for CleanEdison's deconstruction program. And I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I've been working in this industry for 19 years. Some people called us pioneers back then because it is a pretty new industry. It's a growing industry. Therefore, we're creating new jobs instead of just replacing old jobs or people that have been laid off. I helped start 2 stores that sold reclaimed building materials, and I've worked in about 3,000 structures. We had created around 50 jobs when I had my nonprofit organization that I worked for. And just a ton of experience in 41 states and 3 provinces, but have contacts in pretty much all 50 states. So that's a little bit background about me. Let me get started. One thing about this talk is that we only have so much time. There's so much to say about deconstruction. A lot of people don't realize the depth of the subject. Oh, we're just taking old buildings apart, but there is a lot involved when you really start looking into it. So one of the things we did, we started looking into the energy side of things. There were a lot of agencies and groups that were interested in saving energy in all sorts of ways, and they didn't really think deconstruction was a way to save energy. But we participated in a study where they found that the materials that we salvaged saved about 11 to 13 times the energy of manufacturing. So basically, if you manufacture the same or the equivalent amount of materials, it would take 11 to 13 times more energy to manufacture those new than it would to reclaim them from an existing structure. And we call that concept embodied energy. That means that all of the materials that have been produced in the past, it took energy to do that, but that energy didn't disappear. It's stored in those materials. So it's amazing how much energy is stored in a building, and these buildings are being demolished, and all of that energy is being completely wasted. So that's why we're desperately trying to get deconstruction, the industry built up, and as quickly as we can, because the rate of demolition is increasing with all of the urban blight and housing crisis and all of that. You have cities like Indianapolis in Indiana that they're demolishing 2,000 structures in 2012. In the year 2012, they're going to take down 2,000 structures in just 1 year. So that's a lot of energy lost. One of the things is, what is deconstruction? Well, we carefully dismantle a building. We're trying to maximize reuse and recycling in doing that. But our main focus is reuse, saving materials for reuse, because that is such a great benefit as far as job creation and energy savings, natural resource preservation, that sort of thing. We need workers that are properly trained, and that's what this course is trying to do. How to take it apart, how to do it safely, how to do it with the appropriate tools, and how to come out of it with the materials in good shape. So, and not only that, what are you going to do with it once you've got it out? We can't just leave it there at the site, so we have to process it, transport it, and eventually sell it. So there are a lot of benefits to deconstruction. I already said how it saved energy. Of course, it saves natural resources just by not requiring another forest be cut down or another strip mine be made, be created. So, and beyond the potential 95% landfill diversion, and I get that number from a number of LEED certified projects that are trying to achieve 95% landfill diversion. We have, in our analysis of the industry, we realized that for every one demolition worker using a machine like what's on the screen there, we need 25 of our workers to keep up with them. So they just bring one person to the job site with that machine, and they have one person running a dump truck in a lot of cases, and it would take 25 of us to keep up with that rate, and that's with our advanced techniques. So it's a form of job creation, and not any small number either. For those of you that are familiar with LEED, the U.S. Green Building Council has a building rating system, and this rating system is really catching on. And their conference, it draws 35,000 people every year. So, and there's a lot of money being spent on green building. And one of the things that they do is they're trying to earn points, and every point that they earn has a certain price associated with it. And one of the things that people are realizing is deconstruction is a relatively cheap way to get those points. I think that we said that maybe 5 or 7 points in the LEED system could be directly related to deconstruction activities. So that's a really encouraging, and then the cost that they're paying for some of these other points makes deconstruction look pretty appealing. So I've been working with CleanEdison for a couple years now. I was voted the National Building Deconstructor of the Year for the year 2009-2010, and I travel all around teaching students about the process of disassembling these buildings. Now the other thing is, I don't just teach, we actually do the work, and I've worked in 3,000 buildings, and 600 of those we've actually deconstructed. All sorts of buildings, not just regular homes, but we do warehouses and schools and barns and industrial shop buildings and things like that. Anything that we think will reclaim a lot of material. I think the other important point about that is we don't just take the buildings down, we do transport all of them. We do a lot of recycling. In fact, sometimes we recycle more than we reclaim because the nature of the materials. And in addition to that, we sell a lot of materials, and they help fund the projects, or we see that those materials get reused in some other way. So my point of mentioning all of those things, I'm able to pass on this experience to the students. And if they have questions about how this works, I have hundreds of examples that I draw on in the class. And a lot of times we put their questions in the, I draw a box on the whiteboard, and we have the questions get placed there, and on a break I might bring up a photo or a case study or something that I have from the past, and it's meant to target their question and really do the best job I can of answering it. So this isn't just, I'm not just reading this stuff off. I am actually, using my experience to help them learn. Okay, and I love the fact that CleanEdison's classes are almost customized, I would say, depending on what the client wants. They offer a number of modules, you might say, that prepare the students for the workforce. And I can say that because when I had created those 50 jobs, I knew what I wanted out of my employees, and frankly, hardly any of them had as much training in classroom as these students will at the end of a course. One example is the RRP LEED Certification. I took that class not too long ago, and they said only 20% of the contractors that are supposed to have taken that training have actually taken the training. And that you can see what an advantage that is for a student that has taken the training when their boss hasn't even taken the training. And they're starting to crack down on, they're starting to enforce the rules, and these contractors are way behind the times on getting up to speed on these new rules. Of course, asbestos is a huge problem throughout our industry. I've been dealing with it for 19 years. I'm as much of an asbestos expert, I suppose, as anybody in the field of deconstruction, that is. But we come across that we have to protect our workers. We have to make sure that we are following the rules. It's great when your workers have been trained and they have an idea of how to recognize it, and they know how to protect themselves and the procedure that's supposed to happen. I think not only the one thing about the asbestos training that I really like is the fact that these trainees go out into the real world and they can almost protect themselves from kind of shady contractors that are putting their health at risk. There are a lot of contractors out there, a lot of demolition people, I might add, that are not doing anything with asbestos, and when these trainees get out there and they're being exposed to these hazards, they can stand up for themselves and say, I've been educated about this, and what you're doing is wrong. And I think that, not so much to get them in trouble with their boss, but maybe that's not the boss they want to be working for if their health and their family's health is being put at risk. So I like that part of the class. One of the most recognized safety trainings in the country is the OSHA 10 training for safety. I think that it's universally accepted, and it's very important for people that are building a foundation of skills in a short amount of time to have this training. I know that we don't have a slide for it, but CleanEdison has also offered forklift training in the past as part of this customized class that I just love the format of. And the great thing about that is when you think about, well, forklifts are great for deconstruction, but aren't they great for pretty much anybody? When you think about how many people use forklifts in retail stores and warehouses and construction sites and all sorts of places. So there are a lot of this customized course, a lot of it is transferable skills that lead to other careers and open up their job opportunities. Okay, so I'm going to start wrapping it up here. The outline, of the course, like I said, I have so much experience, and it's not just taking buildings apart. I've pulled a million nails, but I've sold a million things as well. So we talk about retailing and we talk about warehousing, and that's an important point. We had 20 people working in our stores, so it's not just a fraction of the workforce either. We do deconstruction and salvage. We actually go to sites. Whenever we can set one up, we actually take a building down, and they get I've often seen the students with their digital cameras taking photos so they can share with their friends and say, hey, look what I'm doing. being pretty proud of the fact that they're involved in that. We love to see that. Value-added work, that's a term that we use. We actually, if you've ever heard of reclaimed wood furniture or remilled wood flooring, these are things that are part of our industry. So we talk about that in the class, and we try to prepare them for that potential, because that's another growing part of the industry. Of course, we're at the job site doing work, and then that's not where the material is going to end up. So we have to process it. We have to transport it. If you see the photo there, you see that they're using what looks like a nail gun, but it's actually a denailing gun. It's designed to pull nails, to shoot nails out of boards instead of into boards. So we are trying to do some innovative work in this industry, come up with some creative tools to make our life easier, to make it more competitive, and then we try to share all of those advances with the students. Safety is a huge part of this. We've never had an accident. In fact, after 19 years, I've never had a time loss injury on any site that I've been present at. And I certainly have never been injured. And you might think that this is dangerous work, but we have ways of controlling, keeping everybody safe, and finally just engineering out a lot of the safety hazards. So deconstruction, developed and projected growth. Sometimes it feels like there's we can only go up with this industry as far as job creation. I mean, demolition is creating that one job, and we are waiting to create those 25 jobs. And a lot of, like anyone related to LEED, a lot of government agencies, a lot of solid waste authorities, they're realizing what a benefit we are. And then it isn't just them, it's also the redevelopment authorities, the job creation agencies, and so on. They're looking at this and they're saying, you know what do you mean? You're creating inner city jobs with a population of hard to employ workers? Well, no one else is trying to do that, and no one else has been successful. So, of course, our job sites are right in the inner city, and a lot of times, the trainees even walk to the job site because they live in the neighborhood. So, in summary, we teach the students a lot of skills in a short amount of time. We're trying to do our best to prepare them. And it depends on the budget of the client, as far as what we can actually get done. But I think these skills that they're learning are some of them are pretty universal. And then we like to open the doors up and say, we don't expect that you're all going to go out and start pulling nails for a living. There are so many other things that we're trying to prepare you for. And we believe that, because of this massive amount of waste that's happening and how it's transferring into materials that are being saved, we think that there is the potential of creating 200 full-time equivalent jobs. And when you see it on the scale that I do, you start understanding how that is a possibility. So that's all I have for the talk. Hope I stayed within the time limits. And I'll turn it over to CleanEdison.
Thank you, Dave. That was a very useful and informative presentation. We have a couple questions from individuals who are on the call, and I'll read them to you. At this point, we don't have anybody who's asking a live question. One question goes back to the slide where you talked about how much more energy it takes to produce the materials as opposed to deconstructing them. And the question was, is it more expensive or less expensive to deconstruct when you look at a demolish versus a deconstruct?
Well, the interesting thing is, yes, we're saving a lot of energy, but no one is willing to assign a dollar amount to that. They recognize the benefit, but they aren't willing to pay for it. So what we've had to do to survive in this industry is to make deconstruction competitive. economically viable. So we have a number of tricks that we employ, all, of course, legitimate and legal, but one of them is that a lot of times the materials are donated to a nonprofit, and to give you an example, there's a cost to doing deconstruction. There's a benefit to donating the materials. You get a tax deduction. If that works out, the tax deduction, the benefit, is subtracted from the cost, and the net cost is less than demolition. So you would think that deconstruction would be the underdogs, but in my operation we won 85% of our bids on the projects that we chose to bid on because our cost was lower. And where demolition could maybe do it in 1 to 2 days, we were doing it in 3 to 5 days, and they found that the two barriers to deconstruction were it costs too much and it takes too long. So we addressed both of those issues, and there are other ways that we have addressed that as well. But we've been able to control costs, and I think as landfilling fees keep rising, that makes demolition less competitive, and it helps us catch up.
Thanks, Dave. Here's the next question. The question comes from Bob. The question is, where are the reuse stores in the U.S. and how many are there?
That's a great question, actually. There are over 1,400, so I can't name off where they all are, but I can tell you that they're in all 50 states. North Dakota, very few. California, quite a few. A lot of the stores are clustered on both coasts, but we are seeing new operations start all over the country, and you have the Habitat for Humanity stores, which now number over 600. They have over 600 in their franchised Habitat for Humanity restores, they call them. So there, the growth is, I can tell you, when we started 19 years ago, in 1993, we were looking around and saying, where are the stores? And we had to travel 300 miles to get to one. And then, now within 300 miles, there's probably 20 stores.
Here's a great follow-up question to that. Mary asked, what areas of the country are you seeing a potential for growth, and is there any reason why a certain part of the country would be more appropriate than other areas?
Well, one of the things, and I don't like picking on different areas, and this is gonna be a strange answer, but you take Ohio, for example. There's a lot of buildings being demolished in Ohio because of urban blight and the housing crisis. They've chosen to remove thousands and thousands of buildings between Columbus, Youngstown, Akron, Cleveland, and Dayton, and etc. So there's a lot of interest there, and there's growth there. And that is the least likely place I would have thought, because their landfilling fees are so cheap. If you go to Seattle, Washington, the landfilling fees might be $110 a ton. If you go to Youngstown, Ohio, it's only $11 a ton. It's like they're subsidizing waste in Ohio. It's like they want people to throw things away. And I don't want to speak out against them, because they're also, at the same time, there are people in Ohio that are very interested in deconstruction. So we're seeing a lot of growth there, even though the landfilling fees are less. But in general, when it costs more to throw something away, contractors start looking for options. Or since we don't throw things away, we only throw a little bit of material away, we use the savings, the money we don't pay the landfill, we use that money to pay for labor.
Hey, we have another question. This question comes from Bill. On one of your slides, you talked about the training and what skills are taught, and you mentioned math. what type of level math is required for this type of course?
Well, the math is taught before I get there, but one of the things that we're going to go over in this class is, you know, one of the best ways to teach math is start talking about dollars per hour. I love talking about dollars per hour with the students, like how many dollars per hour are you making, or how many would you like to make? Would you like to make minimum wage, which is like maybe $9 an hour or $8, whatever it is? Or would you rather make $18 an hour? And we start talking about how this is the type of industry where hard work can relate directly to your hourly rate of pay. So we will go through these buildings. Now, one of the exercises in the class is to go through a building and do an inventory of it, so we know what types of materials are in that building, everything from how many 2x4s are in there, well, how many feet of 2x4. So you have to do some basic math to figure that out. And then how many square feet is the building? So now you have to figure out length times width. Or how many square feet is the roof? Well, now you have to do, you know, it's a little more complicated because we're trying to figure out a roof which is not flat. So these are some of the math problems that we're coming up with. But once we've quantified how much material is in there, then we start attaching prices to things and then multiplying we often are showing that in an Excel spreadsheet. And then we're calculating, okay, how many hours did people work? Well, you worked 8 hours, but there was 5 of you, so that's 40 hours. And then we brought in $2,000 worth of product today. We figured that out. We figured out we worked 40 hours. So how many dollars per hour did we generate? You know, those are the kind of math questions that once they come to me, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about, because that's the important math for our, for our industry.
Thanks, Dave. We have another question. Does a certification come with this course?
Oh yeah, certainly. We offer a certificate of completion, and it's based on the hourly, the hours that were completed. So students cannot miss very much time and expect to get that certificate. The certificate is backed up with all of our experience, our combined experience. And as far as the, a final test, we haven't been offering that. We haven't been asked to offer that. So right now it is a certificate of completion. We do quizzing in class and things like that to make sure that people are getting it, and I think it's I think that the industry in general is getting more recognition, so the certificate is as well. And if we offer, of course, if anyone has a question about what is that certificate worth, I think we often refer people to my site or the internet to find out just the level of experience that that I have that backs that certificate up.
I'd like to, hey Dave, this is Ryan. I'd like to jump in as well and just mention, a lot of the organizations that we're working with, either previously incarcerated or at-risk youth or certain city programs, even though they're looking for a national certification, which hasn't really yet emerged, although there's maybe some talks of that. What we focus on is additional certifications that are tied into it, like OSHA or Asbestos, or the lead RRP certification. So those are things that students can really point to in terms of from a job perspective. But then, having completed Dave's course, that he's the training provider, they can then go to any reuse store or any deconstruction company that's starting up and not only point to the fact that they've had deconstruction training, but they also have their lead RRP, asbestos, and OSHA safety. So those are, like you said, everything's customized. However, we do like to add those things if it's in the budget, or we'd like to customize the class in a way that makes most sense for those students for gaining full employment.
Yeah, and Ryan's correct. There is no national standard. Our industry technically was only named in the year 2000. To give you an idea, we as an industry, we decided on the name deconstruction in the year 2000 at a conference in Florida. So it really says to you, you know, this is a young and growing industry with a lot of potential, and things like national certifications are on the way, but not yet completed.
We have two more questions at this point, one for Dave and one for Ryan. Dave, the question for you is, who determines the value of the donations to the nonprofits? This question comes from Monica.
Oh, that's a great question. That's actually a very critical part of the class, because I'm explaining to the students why deconstruction can keep up with the lower demolition prices. So the process is that you have a building owner, and you have a deconstruction company, and you have a nonprofit. And the building owner wants to donate their material. They also want to have their building taken down. The deconstruction company puts a bid in, and that's their only role. The nonprofit accepts the material, and that's their only role, other than the nonprofit has to complete a typewritten list of materials that were donated to them and acknowledge that they were donated. They don't fill in any values, so the nonprofit is not allowed to fill in any values. The owner is not allowed to fill in any values when the deduction is above $5,000. Now, who is allowed to fill in the values? Well, a certified third party is chosen to fill in the values, to actually assign values to the donation, and that way there isn't a conflict of interest, because both the owner and the nonprofit could be persuaded to put some pretty big numbers in there. Unfortunately, some people in our industry are doing that, where they're putting some extremely high deduction values, and that's one of the reasons that I called the IRS and have talked to them 9 different times researching this topic, and just to make sure that what we're doing is that the IRS finds the process that we're using acceptable. So when you hear about tax deductions that are $200,000 there, you might want to call the IRS, because they are calling it fraud. I'm not a tax expert, but my job is to keep people from becoming fraudulent nonprofits. So that's why we've researched that topic a lot.
Thank you, Dave. Ryan, a question we have from another Bob. The question is with respect to youth that are trained in this or former offenders. Are there tax advantages to hiring them in certain localities? Have you researched this at all?
Yeah, it would definitely be recommended that you research it. Certain, not just even states on a state basis, but even on a county or city basis, there's tax incentives on hiring certain people with certain backgrounds, mainly because they're concerned about that population, and they need those people to get jobs. So if you're part of a workforce investment board or a one-stop center, or you're one of these organizations that works with at-risk youth, it's really important that you might look into those tax advantages, just so you can gauge whether or not this is appropriate for you. So there's many reasons why it is appropriate, but just knowing the facts can be very valuable to you. And a little bit of research go a long way. And we'll research.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank to you, Dave, as well. And thank you to all of our attendees who have joined us today. If you wish to have more information on CleanEdison's deconstruction training or any of the other training courses we offer, we invite you to visit our website at www.cleanedison.com. Additionally, in the next couple days, we will be posting this webinar on our website. So if you have a chance to go over this with a colleague or you missed a portion of it, we invite you to view the entire webinar online. Again, thank you for your time, and we hope to have you in one of our classes soon. Take care.